We believe in perfect right action in this center, and it's kind of an odd circumstance that I'm up here today, but Elizabeth and I were talking, and I was here 5 years ago when we brought in Reverend John McLean, so I'm up here again today. But I'd like to tell you a little story, and it's about the days when the big river boats reigned as kings of commerce, carrying goods and people down the great rivers of our country. And did you know that they never had just one captain on the long journey from source to sea? One captain would load the boat, prepare it for its trip, get started on the way, but somewhere down the line, that person would disembark and allow someone else to take the wheel. Someone who knew that part of the river, knew the conditions of that particular voyage, and would continue the trip. So it would go, one captain after another, who had the knowledge that was needed each part of the way. I know that this center is an expression of perfect right action, and then it manifests exactly what it requires each step of the way. So it is my honor to bring to our podium this morning the right person to help us navigate this part of the river, our friend and new man at the wheel, Reverend Keith Cox.
Thank you. Good morning. We're still getting feedback there? We're good, right? We're good? Cool. That was beautiful, Terry. I'm getting feedback somewhere. So it's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you this morning. Just want to take you in for a second. You guys can take me in while I'm taking you in too. So really wonderful to be here. We know that divine right action is always at play in our philosophy and our teaching, and we also know that change is in front of us, right? We know that because that's the nature of life. And so I got to experience change this morning because the way that I really like to do Sunday talks and this process of the evolution of my ministerial career is very multimedia oriented. So I had a fantastic, beautiful slideshow set up for us this morning, and the universe chose to not support us in giving that to you in this format. Because inasmuch as we all know that we are one, somehow the cloud and the Apple component of life doesn't seem to agree with that right now. So I'm going to invite you as I talk to you this morning about the opportunity to look inward, to visualize what it is that we want to experience individually in our lives, as well as collectively as a spiritual community, to use that same creative power when I describe to you what the slide was supposed to look like that you're going to see. Good? You good with that? So the first slide was this. So now what? That's the title of my commentary for us this morning. So now what? This spiritual center has gone through many different expressions of itself over the years. Certainly there have been different leaders at the helm, if you will. Now we know that they're also known as boat captains. I've known them to be kings and queens and presidents and ministers and all of that, but now we can add boat captain to that. But not only in the process of leadership has that taken place here, but also in the process of the journey of who shows up in this center. So I was talking to both the board president, Elizabeth Dad, and let's send her love for a moment on her healing, as well as Reverend John on his journey. But in talking to her, one of the conversations that we were having, and that has been the theme this week, is that as this center chooses to manifest the next expression of itself in the journey known as currently the title, the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles, that there's a real opportunity before us to make a decision and a commitment to understand that that which is being birthed through spirit is a reflection of the co-creative process of life. That the days are gone by whereby that your minister or your leader is in a hierarchical position. That church, if you will, in that process of there being someone at a very high position that you look up to lead you into the next expression is really not going to serve this community. It's not going to serve you, because we all know now that for us to grow, it must be a collaborative process. And so I'm really excited about that for you and together. And what I want to talk about today is not only us doing this in a collaborative process, but being ready to step into that journey and being willing to ride the ride of that journey when it looks different than how we think it's supposed to look. So now what? Visualize the next slide. And it was a blue background with white letters, and it said this: adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience. Now, why is that important for us to know? And that's Ralph Waldo Emerson, by the way. Because there's rumblings already within this community that we need to hire a minister right now. Even the board has talked about, we want this to happen by January. And the truth is that's probably not the right way to look at this. The best way to look at this is to know that through the co-creation, and there will be a co-creation process you'll hear more about, but I'm talking about the co-creative nature of us working with Spirit and the laws of the universe so that we get clear on what it is that you want to attract into your world as your leader, as opposed to them attracting you. What is it that we want to attract into this realm known as CSLLA? What values do we want them to hold? What vision do we want them to hold? How do we want them to serve you as you serve them in that collaborative process? That's going to take some time. And what's really wonderful about the concept of that is that Spirit, as we know it, does not know time. Time is a human concept. So we get to play in this realm that is timeless and then develop for ourselves patience, just as nature has. So this morning, as I talk about the evolutionary process and the manifestation and the demonstration of what is to come for this center, I'd like for you individually to identify for yourself what is it that you would like to have look different in your life during the process of the creation for this organization. Not only from the perspective of the values that you and I would like to have in our lives, but what is it you'd like to manifest in your life? Is it a new car? Is it a new lover? Is it a new job? Is it more patience? Is it greater money? What would you like for it to be? And allow the process that we're going to go through together on the journey of spiritual exploration in the manifestation process to use that experience in that process in a parallel way to do it in our own lives. Why is that important? Because we can't experience anything collectively or created in our lives unless we're willing to do the work ourselves personally. Because the universe that responds to us based on the consciousness that we develop ourselves, or that we hang on to or embrace ourselves. And is that an easy process? Sometimes it's not. But what we know from what Ralph Waldo Emerson has just told us is that patience is important. So I looked up the definition of patience. How many of you are patient by nature? How many of you are lying? You know? So patience is not one of my great gifts or virtues, and I have learned as time has gone on when it's important to be patient. And so I looked up the definition for that, and I will encourage and invite us together that as this journey unfolds over the next few months, that if we find each other not being patient, to give each other permission to remind us to be patient and to just breathe into the creative process. The definition of patience is this: the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. What it's telling us here is that we have within us, should we choose to engage it, the capacity to accept or tolerate, be willing to allow that to show up in our lives, trouble or suffering without getting angry or delay. What it's telling us is that when things show up in our lives that look contradictory to that which we desire, we have the capacity within ourselves to tolerate that. Now, tolerate that how? We can tolerate that in a state of frustration, anger, denial, believing that the universe isn't working for us, or we can tolerate that. Tolerate doesn't have to be a bad word. We can tolerate that in the concept of knowing that this or something is greater. In speaking to the woman that will guide this congregation through the creative process the other day when I was finalizing the details of that with her, she said, I'm so excited for the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles because as we delve into this co-creative process, allowing that to emerge, which is going to emerge, if we all do that from the perspective of trusting and giving ourselves permission to use spirit in a new way, that which will emerge is something greater than we've either ever experienced before or that we have the capacity to comprehend in the moment. Now, how does that sound for you as the person that's guiding you on the riverboat of the journey of being a spiritual center in the magnificent city of Los Angeles? Does that sound good? Yeah, it sounds good to me as well. So what that requires, though, for us is to sit back at times, just take a step back and say, what is it that I want to have experienced? What is it that I want spirit to emerge through me as? What is it that I'm willing to move beyond the traditional boundaries of my own personal thought so that I can embrace and invite into my world by means of experience an idea that's going to blow my mind, right? A blown mind is pretty good. Because what we know is that the mind can never be blown forever because mind in and of itself is infinite. So it'll always kind of come back into the wave of life. The synonyms for patience are this: forbearance, tolerance, restraint, self-restraint, and stoicism. The three that I really like there are restraint, self-restraint, and stoicism. What I believe that to mean for us as we move through this process is to have restraint. Restraint for what? To accept what is in life right now, to let go of what was, and to then have faith of what will be. That requires restraint. Why? Because life shows up. Life shows up. Life shows up sometimes when you have 2 laptops out here and 2 iPads and a remote control and you don't have a slideshow, right? You have an option in that moment to get PO'd, right? Or to trust that there's something bigger that is unfolding in that moment. To literally allow not only your own restraint to do that, but self-restraint. I require self-restraint a lot. I'm a big personality. I'm sure you guys haven't figured that out yet. It requires self-restraint for me because I vibrate at a really, really high frequency. And oftentimes what comes out of my mouth isn't in alignment with my spiritual nature. And so it leaves a field sometimes that isn't always healthy for those that are experiencing that. So you get what I mean by that? So very well put, huh? But what I have learned to do in life is to literally take a step back. Ask myself, is that which I'm about to express loving and kind and giving? As well as, is it in alignment with that which I have desired and defined for myself as the life I want to experience? And the truth is that the only way we're going to know where that's the case is when we're willing to dive in and swim on that journey of the river of life. What is required here is to be stoic in that process, to stand tall, to stand true, to stand proud of what is here, to let go of what was, and to be open to what it takes to hold responsibility to co-create that which we desire. What was said here is that what's really important is faith. Faith. Faith is defined in the Science of Mind textbook, which really wasn't a textbook, by the way. It was chosen to be a textbook later that way. But this is what Ernie wrote about that. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Listen to that again in a different way. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, meaning that it's the substance, even though it's untangible at the moment, but we know that everything that we desire, because we live in an infinite universe, already exists, and for us to experience it, we must call it forth through our consciousness and using the laws of creation. So what he's telling us there is that which we desire already exists. So we must believe it and know it. That's what faith is, by knowing it, right? And he goes on to write, and it's the evidence of things not seen. He continues to write, faith is a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. Faith is a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. Now that requires self-restraint. Do you not agree with me? Self-restraint to stay in that belief system of that which I desire exists. That which I desire exists. That which I desire exists, and it exists even when you show up on a Sunday morning and you may not hear the song that you like. It exists when you come to a class and you might learn something differently in the way that you did before. It exists even when we might do meditation differently on a Sunday morning. It exists whether or not the slides show up. What we're learning is that it exists. And should we desire to have a greater relationship with the power that we call God or Doug or life or Susie or whatever it is you call it, for us to have a greater relationship with that, we must commune with it or dance with it, if you will, in a way of knowing that it is unfailing. And during this process of co-creation for this center, what we have to do, a quote from our beloved Elizabeth Dad, is consciously choose to live in the gap. You know, the title for me during this period is called The Gap Minister. We made it up, by the way. It isn't an official title anywhere. We made it up because we didn't know what other term to choose, because interim will come down the road. But Elizabeth and I were talking about this at lunch the other day, and we said, what a wonderful term, actually, for where this center is that we are in the gap between what was and what is to be. And the question and the invitation that I have for you is, are you willing to consciously live in that place? We were talking about how we think of the gap, and of course the Gap band came to mind for me, but she was saying that the gap in her mind is that place between when you inhale and exhale. And as we discussed that further, I said, well, actually what I believe that to be is that's the place where creation takes place. It's that place where if we breathe in and then breathe out, it's in that space in between that creation or demonstration or manifestation actually takes place. It's the same concept of when we plant a seed. If you plant a seed, do you need to tend to that seed for it to grow? Absolutely. But there are also moments when you have to let it alone. You have to consciously walk away and trust that the seed's going to emerge through the ground and produce for you that which is a reflection of what is intelligently and inherently within the seed. And that's the same for you and I when we're co-creating experiences or expressions in our lives, and it's the same for us as a spiritual community. What we must do is give ourselves permission to not only commune with God in a new way, but to be open to the possibilities of what could be going forward. And then we need to do the work that is required to plant that seed into the creative mind, and then step back while continuing to show up and participate and play and let it emerge in the process of that which is the divine. Because no matter what any of us believe, one way or the other, good is being made manifest here at the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles. I know that you all believe that, or you wouldn't be here today, right? Right? You wouldn't be here today. And wasn't last Sunday beautiful? Absolutely beautiful. And I honor you for taking the time to send Reverend John off in such a beautiful way, because he deserves it, A, and B, it speaks to who you are as a community. Because what that said to me, and I literally am telling you personally, what that said to me as I was sitting out there last Sunday was, this is a vibrant community who has a vested interest in how metaphysics and new thought is taught and shared in the city of Los Angeles. Is that true for you? Is that true for you? Now, I'm not saying that for you to applaud. I'm asking you that in the process of identifying for yourselves what it is that you desire going forward, so that you own that power. And that you own that and start inviting friends here, and you start giving a little more to the collection plate. I don't even like that term, collection plate. That when the basket goes by, you give a little bit more financially that speaks to your understanding of the principles and the laws of the universe. We must give so that we may receive. Now, no one asked me to stand up here and say that to you today. I'm saying that to you today so that we may grow together, because that's what it's going to be required over time. And that your ideas are vitally important. Did you guys read the email I sent this week? So what I want you to know is we want your thoughts, and we want your loving comments. What we don't want are your bitches and moans. I'm serious. The board president's not here, so I can say that. And why is that? Because it's critical during this developmental phase of what vibrational frequency we all bring forward. That's why it matters. It's not just because I don't want to hear bitching and moaning. No one wants to hear that anyway. But it's because it's important for us to be clear on what vibrational frequency we bring forward in our communication while we define what it is that we want to have show up in the next expression of this ministry. Is that going to be easy? Sometimes. Sometimes not. But remember, faith is important. A great acronym for faith that I love is full assurance in the heart. Full assurance in the heart. And what it's telling us there is having faith by having a full assurance in the heart is to know that love is the way. Love, which is the self-givingness of spirit, but love is the way. Let's choose to be loving with one another as we maneuver this path. And at times, fear is going to probably show up because that's the nature of life. For all light, there is darkness. And in one of our slides, it's going to show up, clink, it's this. And it says, fear has two meanings. Forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. Or face everything and rise. I choose to believe for myself that I want to face everything and rise, which is part of why I said yes to being here during this gap period, and who knows after that, is I want to face everything that's showing up in my life and rise to it and see if I want to show up in life and participate in this way or not. The only way to do it is by facing it, rising to the occasion, and then riding the ride. Right? But what I've also learned is that what's so important for us in this process of growth and evolution and the journey called life is to have a spiritual practice. For you and I to maneuver that which is in front of us, we must have a spiritual practice. Now, you guys have heard that term before, correct? Okay, so I'm going to trust you have, and if not, I'll explain it to you. So in the metaphysical community, it's a big I'm going to call it a word in parentheses or quotation marks, spiritual practice. And so oftentimes it's taught that what you must do is get up and meditate in the morning, and then you must drop to your knees, and then you must do the 5 or 7 or 10 or 12 steps of spiritual mind treatment so that you align your consciousness with that which you desire, and then go about your business. Is it important to do that? Yes. But that's not the only type of spiritual practice in life. That is a type of spiritual practice, or one of two. And it's important that we have them. But I also think spiritual practice throughout the day is being kind to one another. It's being open-minded to the possibilities of what may come to us. It's the willingness to open the door for somebody and say hello and or thank you. It's, as I said before, to give a little bit more to that where you're spiritually fed. It's to be connected to the community that we have here. And it's to ask questions. It's to give yourself permission to practice what you know spirituality to be, which is the mindfulness of being aware that you are one with the mind of God, and we're all one with that mind. What I think is important for us as we maneuver this process, and I will make a covenant and a commitment to you today that I will do this, is to begin each day that's in front of me with a grateful heart. Because what we know is that gratitude is one of the most transformative qualities on this planet. That if you and I choose every day in every way to stop when life shows up a little funky, to be grateful for what we have, then that will shift our consciousness so that we can be even more aware of how we ride the ride of evolution, right, and spiritual exploration and manifestation. I saw this meme that I really loved that I think speaks to this, and it says, the things that you take for granted, oftentimes someone else is praying for. Perspective, right? What that tells us is that oftentimes in life we get caught up with what we don't have or what it is that we want to have. And oftentimes that which we have is far greater than what others have. And so let's just take a moment in life to be grateful for what we do have. And know that the journey of life is sometimes going to be really, really fun. Sometimes it's going to be really challenging, and sometimes it's going to be something in between. The next slide that I had for you this morning was this beautiful field, and you saw a fire hydrant. And it said, some days you're the dog, and some days you're the hydrant. Process that. Some days you're the dog, and some days you're the hydrant. What that's telling us is what Dr. Walker used to always tell us, which is all God's children got stuff. And he meant that by means of us individually, but also collectively. And so what I want to remind you of as I walk away from this podium today is that the future that we have in front of us is ours for the making. It is truly ours for the making. That the journey ahead might be longer than any of us think. It might be shorter than any of us think. But what is important is that we choose to go through it together. Because if you truly do, and I do believe you truly do, desire to have a spiritual center here known as the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles, not only that you're proud of, but that is a beacon of transformation that attracts people into it of all ages, of all sizes, of all colors, of all sexual orientation. If that's what you want, that which is a diverse, inclusive environment, it can be done. You know, we live in one of the largest cities that exists, certainly in the U.S., if not the largest city, or second largest city, I believe it is. I don't know the stat off the top of my head. But the capacity here and the opportunity is endless for what can be created here. But it's not going to happen for someone like me to stand in front of you and say, here's what you need to do. It's only going to happen when we all get into the trenches, and I mean that both metaphorically and literally, by coming together and using the creative mind of God in creative ways to spread metaphysics, new thought in a new way. And mostly it's going to happen by choosing together to have a new thought about that and then sit back and see what Spirit brings forward. I think that sounds like fun. How about you guys? I mean, part of the reason I said yes to this, and people have said to me, why did you say yes to doing this in this short period of time? And I said, there's really three reasons that I did this. One is because I love this center. Many of you guys know this is where I started, and it's my spiritual home, if you will, to me. The other is that I love me some John McClain, and I want to really honor him on his journey ahead as your last spiritual director. And the third piece is I want to get in here and see if there is fertile ground. I'm a builder. I want to come in here and see, is there fertile ground to build something significant here? I think there is, but I can't do it alone. And not that it's mine to do, because I'm here in the Gap band, remember? But I think it's here for somebody to do. And it might be me, it might not be, I don't know. But what I do know is that it's worth investigating. I do know that it's time to get in there and play with what's going on in the spiritual realm and the physical realm and see if there's an alignment that can take place that's going to blow the ceiling off this place. I think it's possible. And I know that you think it's possible. And I know if it's possible for us as a community, it's possible for you in your life. So what I encourage and invite you to do today, that when you walk outside the doors of the Harmony Golf Theater, is to remind yourself of what it is that you decided earlier in this service that you want to experience in your life in a new way. I want to remind you to make a covenant to yourself that you begin each day not only in a frame of gratitude, but with a spiritual practice that can shift your vibrational frequency in a way that life as you know it shows up differently. I want to invite you and encourage you to know that today, October 18th, 2015, is the day to know God in a new way, if you choose to do so. And I can assure you that if you do so, based on my personal experience, the ride will be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Thank you. Namaste. It's good to be here with you.